This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here today, co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business, Melissa Francis, Democratic strategist Julie Roginsky, National Review reporter Katherine Timpf, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. Look who's back on the couch. Veteran sports broadcaster and Super Bowl winning quarterback Joe Theisman is here, and we say he's outnumbered. You've seen a bigger line than this one. I don't know if you consider yourself outnumbered.
But believe me, a much prettier looking line. I mean, and you talk about the line that I see all the time. I only see one side of them. So that's part of the issue.
Oh my goodness.
I only see one side of the guys up front, so that's a little bit of an issue. But it's great to be back with you.
All right, well, it's nice to be part of the upgrade in your life. Thanks for being here.
Major upgrade.
Okay, well, new and potentially troubling developments for presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. The State Department says it cannot find a single relevant email on her personal server to or from Brian Pagliano. Now, remember, he worked for the agency and also set up and managed her private computer server. And it was during her time as Secretary of State. That's according to court filings after the Republican National Committee sued the State Department for those records. Pagliano was offered immunity by the Justice Department in its continuing investigation into Clinton's server and emails and whether they violated national security laws. The lack of any official emails between the two raising questions now about whether those communications were scrubbed from both their accounts. This is a big deal. Julie, I'm going to come to you first. The Democrat on the couch, because you have said all along you have not been in favor of the way she has handled this.
Yes. I mean, I thought she's handled this horribly. There really was no excuse for a private email server. There was no excuse for her not to be using her State Department email. I will say, though, typically, this is, first of all, a lawsuit filed by the RNC, but typically, when the Justice Department starts investigating, all other civil lawsuits, I think, sort of take a back seat until the Justice Department is done with its recommendation. And so for me, I'm curious to see what Jim Comey, who's by no means a political hack or in the tank for anybody, he's the head of the FBI, if he recommends an indictment, Democrats should accept it. But if he doesn't recommend an indictment, I would hope that Republicans also understand that there was a thorough investigation. She's been cleared, and let's move on.
All right, let's talk about who this person is, Brian Pagliano. At one point, an intelligence source who was not authorized to speak on the record. So our Fox News reporting staff here has been able to talk with this source, who said Pagliano is a devastating witness in the FBI's case in any investigation. So the fact that he was the guy who set this whole thing up.
Yeah, how do you go through a 4-year period, 30,000 emails, and yet have no correspondence between the person that set it up, the IT individual that sets it up, and Secretary Clinton at that time? I mean, it's just, the American people have to step back and say, it's virtually impossible. This is something that just cannot be real. Tell us something. Say there were 5, except for the one, happy birthday, Madam Secretary. That's the only one they found in 30,000 emails.
Right. You know, and you're absolutely right about this fact. How could it be possible? Actually, it wasn't. It just wasn't on the server that they're looking for, which sounds nearly impossible. So what do, Melissa? They went and they looked, they kind of triangulated, if you will. They looked at other people who would have been either CC'd or had access to those emails. And Joe, you're absolutely right. There was a trail there. It just mysteriously was not on her server.
There is literally no way to explain this that isn't breaking the law, because either he was on the federal payroll, but he wasn't doing any federal work at all. So he was getting money from the government and he was essentially in a fake job. That's the only way you could explain why there wouldn't be emails. Or they were scrubbed, they were deleted, and that's obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence. So there's no way to explain this away where people didn't break the law and know they were doing it.
Or, they just didn't email each other, right? That's possible. No, that's ridiculous.
The IT guy didn't email. That makes a lot of sense.
Right, which is why when you say, I hope conservatives can let it go if there's no indictment, I can't let something like this go. I can't. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and, Julie, again, Pagliano, why he's so important is because he did the home system for her. He was the key IT guy. He was the webmaster, as they are called. So he would be able to tell the government in his now immunity-enhanced testimony now, because he's got immunity with the government, he would be able to say when, how, who, what, where, exactly how that system, who had access to it, and why.
And the only way immunity works, and luckily I don't know this firsthand, but my understanding is the only way immunity works is if you give up all the information they're looking for. So he may have those emails, whether the State Department finds them or not. He obviously has them and somewhere on his server. And the question is he going to turn them over to the FBI? He has to in order to get immunity. And what those emails show. But again, once that is all thoroughly vetted, and I believe it is going to be thoroughly vetted and is vetted by the FBI, let's wait for their recommendation before jumping to conclusions as to whether laws were actually broken enough to indict or not.
All right.
Broken
so
enough. The laws were broken enough.
Part of the problem with this, where the public is concerned, Joe, has to do with the fact that people don't trust that justice will be carried out. You mentioned James Comey, the FBI director. He's already said he's personally looking at this. He wants people to know that this is a clean investigation, that sort of thing.
Right.
But, you know, let's just remember this moment back in March. Univision's Jorge Ramos asked Mrs. Clinton about this, and she said, you know, he said, if you get indicted, will you drop out of the presidential race? And she responded, my goodness, that's not going to happen. That's part of the problem with all of this, that she has not taken it to the point where people even think she's taking it seriously.
Well, she's not taking responsibility for what she did. And when you stop and think about the Secretary of State, and I was listening to President Obama one day, he talked about, he said, there's top secret, and then there's top secret.
Right.
Well, how do you, something's top secret. It doesn't fall into two categories, in my opinion. If I'm an American citizen and I'm thinking something is top secret, it doesn't have a B, or C classification to it. So he was talking about what might have been in those emails. I just think it was, and he called her careless. You know, President Obama called Secretary Clinton careless.
Which is not illegal.
It's not illegal, but do you really think about it? Do you want someone that is in the most powerful position in this country
To be that
carelessly
With,
taking care of things if it has to do with national security, or it has to do with their servers or emails? I mean, it gives us pause to stop and think about what's going to happen if.
Yeah, well, and she signed that document. Right? She signed that document saying that she understood the classifications, and things were classified based on the content and not the markings. She signed the document that said she'd read the pages and that she got it. She understood it.
You know, I will say, though, she has taken responsibility to the point where she said she made a mistake setting up the email server. You can't expect her to say to Jorge Ramos or to anybody else, of course, I'm waiting to get indicted, and so if I get indicted, I'm going to drop out. Any politician, any strategist in the world would tell a politician, don't make a big deal out of this because you have an election to run.
Good luck.
So,
we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
Republicans voting in Nebraska is primary today, and both parties are voting in West Virginia, where Donald Trump is running unopposed for the first time on the GOP side. Hillary Clinton, though, still contending with Bernie Sanders, and she could face some big problems in the general election. A brand new Quinnipiac poll shows her in a dead heat with Trump in 3 key swing states. That's in Pennsylvania, where 20 electoral votes are up for grabs. Clinton is just ahead of Trump, 43 to 42. The numbers are the same in Florida, though the stakes there are higher with 29 electoral votes. And in Ohio, Trump edges out Clinton 43 to 39, 18 electoral votes there. Joe, the reason why we highlight these states is because these are states, of course, that President Obama won in the last election from Mitt Romney. If they swing, it could change everything and put Trump over the top. A lot of times pollsters and smart political people out there always say it's the electoral college map that counts. What do you think about all this?
Well, the electoral college map does count, but I think the American people count also. And those 3 states have been very important to the elections going forward in the general. No question about it. And it looks like Donald Trump is in a position now. And now it's time for the GOP to get behind Donald Trump instead of trying to beat it. It seems like the GOP has been focused on trying to defeat Donald Trump. We don't want Trump to be the nominee. Instead of saying, OK, you're there. The American people have spoken. The delegates have spoken. We want you. And these 3 states are very important. But I've learned more about the delegate counts and about caucuses in this election situation than I've ever thought of, ever know in my life.
Yeah.
And I just think they are important. Absolutely. Now, the question is, what happens if you do carry them? You know, is it going to be enough, or is there going to be more of a problem going forward for the GOP, the Democrats, and really Bernie Sanders is Hillary Clinton sitting there like with Bernie Sanders as a fly, just go away.
But he won't go away.
Bernie Sanders just picked up more delegates over this past weekend, so they split the 2 contests that went on very quietly over the weekend.
And she's going to lose West Virginia.
He's more than a fly. I mean, she's going to get this with the delegate count and her superdelegates, definitely. I mean, I can't see how that wouldn't happen. But the problem is we don't know what his supporters are going to do. And if they don't come to her side,
Harris, this is exactly the same thing we talked about in 2008. It's the same thing we talked about when we said, oh, my goodness, what's Hillary Clinton going to do when she drops out? Don't forget, she's much
more Obama supporters now.
She wasn't facing anybody. Barack Obama was worried about whether her supporters were going to come across. Look, when you have people like Elizabeth Warren, who's refused to endorse Hillary Clinton so far, saying that her #1 priority is to prevent Donald Trump from being president, that sends a not-so-secret whistle to the Bernie Sanders supporters with whom she shares a base, that this is a lot more than about Hillary Clinton.
Share a base. I don't think necessarily that Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton
and Elizabeth Warren share a base.
Go ahead.
And especially if you look at something like West Virginia with the comments she made about coal. I mean, Oklahoma was already a bloodbath before she said those things. She's saying, I'm going to shut down coal industry. These are not going to make it easier. It's going to be worse. And the fact that Bernie is doing well, it's got a lot to do with this anti-establishment. I'm a man of the people.
Right.
And she's in bed with Goldman Sachs and this and that. I don't think necessarily that they won't just not write in Bernie's name, or maybe even some of them could go to Trump.
I mean, the bizarre thing when you talk to actual regular people out there as opposed to people like us who live in the middle of this every single day, they just want the outside person.
Right.
I mean, they're like, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, to us, we see no crossover, no similarity, because we're looking deep down into what they actually stand for. But when you talk to the taxi cab driver and you talk to, the regular person out there, they do see commonality in those two candidates, no matter how insane it might seem to us.
But Melissa, we also look at math a lot, especially people who do what I do for a living, what you do for a living, right? And so the math dictates and the polling dictates right now that she is collecting a lot more of his supporters if he were to drop out than Trump is collecting the supporters of Republicans who've dropped out. And that's the difficulty. She doesn't need to win in a vacuum. She just needs to be better by 1 or 2 votes than the other guy. And so far, she's consolidating a lot more of the Democratic base than Trump is consolidating the Republican base.
And
that's
I think what we're looking at today, that's one set of math, and the other set of math are these swing states that now look like they're leaning towards him, which would be another anomaly.
I want to yield what little time is left back to you, Julie, because that's really the point here. I mean, is Donald Trump putting into play now for Republicans, just forecasting it out, that Florida and other places could be in play for them when they haven't been in the past?
Quinnipiac is a very good poll, so I'm not disparaging them whatsoever, but the real clear polling average.
The average.
Ohio, she's up by 3. Pennsylvania, she's up by 7. Florida, she's up by 4.3. It's up, yes, but it's still doing better than Obama was doing against McCain in 2008, and he won all 3 of those states.
All right, we've got 6 months to go, a long time to talk about this. Facebook denying reports that it blocked conservative news stories on its site. And now a warning from the RNC about how the social networking giant could impact the election. How straight the news you're getting online really is. That's coming up. And Hillary Clinton dodging reporters' questions about Donald Trump's claims that she was an enabler in her husband's affairs. Is that really a good strategy for him? Or should she be defending herself, maybe?
I'm going to let him run his campaign however he chooses. I'm going to run my campaign.
Hillary Clinton is dodging reporters' questions about Donald Trump's claims that she was a, quote, nasty, mean enabler when it came to her husband's cheating and how he treated women. Trump says he's justified in bringing it all up since she's been playing the woman card all along. And when asked about his attacks, Clinton only had this to say.
I'm going to let him run his campaign however he chooses. I'm going to run my campaign.
And are his claims accurate? And if not, do you feel any need to correct the record on this?
I have nothing to say about him and how he's running his campaign.
And then came round 2.
Why not sort of correct?
Oh, I'm answering him all the time.
But on this subject
No, I'm answering him on what I think voters care about.
So you're responding with substance.
I'm running my campaign. I'm not running against him. He's doing a fine job of doing that himself.
So here's the deal with this. Now the limelight's on this issue. Catherine, how's she doing?
Terribly. And Trump's not going to let it go. He's not a guy that should, be letting things go. And you know what?
Why do you think she's doing badly?
Because this matters. It's not that he's attacking Bill for what Bill did. He's attacking Hillary for what Hillary did, which was she didn't just passively enable. She actively attacked women who he didn't just have affairs with, who accused him of sexually assaulting them. And then now she's running as a feminist. I don't think so. I mean, she called Jennifer Flowers trailer trash. She's accused of, harassing Juanita Broderick. This is something that we need to be talking about. You can't just say, oh, no, yeah, I know, just put it like, no, this stuff happened, and we shouldn't let it go.
So when you raise millions of dollars off of the Metro card turned woman card, because it does kind of look like a Metro card. But when you raise millions of donation dollars like that, Julie, you do put this language about women into play, don't you not?
I will say 2 things. One is many men have made a mistake running against Hillary Clinton on this issue, and the thing is that nobody plays the victim better than Hillary Clinton. So from a political standpoint, it's a dumb thing to do. Secondly, I wish we would cut other women a break when it comes to the fact that their husbands cheated on them and the way we expect them to.
But we're not talking about cheating. We're talking about sexual assault allegations.
Excuse me. Let me finish. First of all, there is no proven sexual assault. Secondly, if your husband is accused of cheating on you and you're living in the land of denial, cut the woman a break.
But then she goes out and she says that anyone who accuses someone of sexual assault has a right to be believed.
I'm sorry,
so
but
she comes out and says that.
I hope for your sake that your husband never cheats on you, and I hope for your sake, if in fact that ever happens, that at some point nobody. Let me finish. At some point, nobody's going to.
I'm just saying that you cannot say that all women who are accused of sexual assault have a right to be believed, and then stay married to a guy.
Are you done? Can I finish my point?
Stay married to a guy. There's no explanation for that.
Well, I'd like to explain, but you're not letting me. What I'm simply suggesting is, I hope if my husband ever cheated on me, nobody's ever going to judge me on the way that I reacted to it and how I treated how I treated those women.
So, can I jump in, because I think this is exactly where this conversation, I think where Hillary Clinton would like it to go. But I think we've tried to boil this campaign down in order to make it make sense, because nothing about it has made sense so far. Who's winning? Bernie Sanders, any of it. Trump, nothing has made sense. So we try to kind of boil it down to one issue, that the whole election is going to ride on women. And it never turns out this way. It's not going to come down to just women. And when you look at it, so Hillary Clinton has 53% of support of women. She has 30-something% of men. Trump has exactly the opposite. He has 53% of men, 35% of women. I was watching this earlier with Martha McCallum saying this.
If they all go to the polls, that's a tie.
There you go.
Yeah. You know what this becomes if Donald Trump is not careful? This becomes a shiny object. Now, that's exactly where Hillary Clinton wants it to go. It's going to be a shiny object. It's going to be some people focused on this, and then she can talk about the economy and look like she's taking the high road. So it is kind of a dicey place for him to go, or do you think not?
I think it is. I think it's a dangerous place to go. I think we have to give women a lot more credit than people tend to do, because women are very smart. They will figure out who the best candidate will be for them. You know, what can Donald Trump do for women? What can Hillary Clinton do for women? She is a woman. You can't get away from the fact that she's a woman. And what happened between her and her husband. It's all been very public. This is a political fireball, to be honest with you. I really believe that Donald has to, at some point, do what he's doing, take his shots. Everything's open game right now, and then move on. He can't just hang himself in this situation and just stay there, but move on to topics that are important to the American people.
But I don't think he's talking about it all that much, though.
But I kind of disagree with that, because I don't think women are sitting back. I mean, I'm a female voter. I'm not saying what are either of these candidates going to do for women. I care about the economy. I care about taxes. I care about national security. I want to know what they're going to do for my whole entire family.
Does
my
it matter
husband,
to you?
my children's, myself.
It does not matter. Does this dialogue matter?
No, neither of those. You know what? Neither of those sides matter to me. I don't care about either of those points. I don't actually care about how derogatory Donald Trump is about women. I have seen him like that. I agree with it. I mean, I don't like his attitude at all, but I don't care about it. I also don't care what happened with Bill and Hillary. I care about taxes, the economy, national security.
So you can't.
That's it.
You can't run as a feminist if you don't have a record of being a feminist.
One thing that I think that you are touching on that is substantial, though, Joe, with regard to, you know, whether or not you try to target women with issues that resonate them. We know that these candidates' campaigns are doing modeling. We already know that where they're trying to hit the voters. So if Hillary Clinton is playing the women's card, and please, you know, I mean, it's got its own website. I mean, it's a real thing. Like, she's committed to this now. He does have to have an answer back. So if it isn't this sort of attack on the past and how she's treated women and so on and so forth, then it would have to be the policies and what he could do. So I understand how you would say
he can't. First of all, he's not prepared to talk about policy, and secondly, because he's just not.
We don't know that.
We don't know that.
We haven't heard him actually do it in a very cohesive and coherent way.
People said that about foreign policy.
And secondly, well, I disagree with that strongly. But secondly, I can't. Maybe I'm old enough to remember this. I cannot believe how stupid people are not to have learned their lessons from the impeachment trial in the 90s. My goodness. Go, God bless, run on this issue, run on Bill Clinton's infidelities, run on her reaction. You know what's going to happen? The Democrats took back the House in '98 because of it, and she's going to win in a landslide and probably take a few Democrats in with her as a result.
The way that we talk about sexual assault and consent now has changed, especially on the liberal side, so it is different now than it is in the 90s.
Wow. Boy, we could go on, but we're not, because we've got some breaking news to tell you about, and it has to do with Senator Ted Cruz. You know, he dropped out of the race 1 week ago today. But just this hour, he is now saying if by some long shot he sees a path forward. Are you paying attention? Hello? Ted Cruz says if he sees a path forward, he will respond accordingly. We'll chew on that one coming up. Are we hungry? Yes, we are. Plus, Facebook is denying reports that it suppressed conservative news stories on its site. And now a warning from the RNC about how the social networking giant could affect the election. And it is that magic time when you jump online and get an early slot on our live chat to get your comments read live when we go Outnumbered Overtime on the web, foxnews.com/outnumbered. Click on the Overtime tab. When the TV version of us wraps up, you'll see us there. Shoot us a tweet. Stay close. So it is another primary Tuesday, and in case you had missed that, there are a couple of states in play. Senator Ted Cruz didn't miss it. Remember, he suspended his campaign a week ago today. But then there's this. Watch.
If Nebraska were to somehow
it's not going to happen,
miraculously choose you tonight,
Pat's going for the Hail Mary.
Is there, I mean, if that happened, would you consider getting back in the race?
Well, I am not holding my breath. My assumption is that that will not happen. But listen, let's be very clear. If there is a path to victory, we launched this campaign intending to win. The reason we suspended the race last week is with Indiana's loss, I didn't see a viable path to victory. If that changes, we will certainly respond accordingly.
You know, people always like to talk about why they suspend, why they don't drop out, so on and so forth officially. Sometimes it can be about paying the bills and continuing to keep the coffers open so that they can do that. And then sometimes I guess it's about keeping your options open. But I do want to preface all of this by saying that Nebraska tonight has 36 delegates up for grabs in the GOP. So I don't know that that would be a game
That'll
changer.
certainly impact Ted Cruz's position.
36
delegates.
What do you think about this, though? He didn't say definitively, but it's on the table.
Just go. Just
go where?
Go away.
Oh, goodness.
Stop. I mean, are we going to go state by state? If Nebraska just by chance happens to like me, then I'll get on. Then if we go to another state and they don't like me, I'll get off. You've made the decision to suspend your campaign. Stay with one decision. This is what should happen. Move on. You don't want to support Donald Trump. He's made it very clear in that regard. But the point is why come in and muddle situations even more? Isn't it time? I just keep thinking the GOP at some point is going to have a revelation or epiphany that says we really need to figure out who we want to be the nominee, and let's all get behind that individual.
All right, Julie, you've worked on campaigns before. Have you ever seen anything quite like it?
Okay, call me Pollyanna, all right?
This campaign?
I'm
Never.
no.
But I'm a little concerned about our friend Glenn Beck. I feel like he's going through stages of grief. I mean, acceptance is a stage he needs to get to because he's the one that's asking, are you going to get back in? Is it possible? Is it
not over yet? Is it,
Teddy? Not over. I mean, like, give up the ghost, Glenn Beck.
But who does that help? Who does that help? I mean, I think it helps Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs Ted Cruz to complete his narrative. He doesn't. I mean, that's why he's talking about, oh, Paul Ryan, I don't know if we really need to bring the party together. I don't know if I'm going to meet with you. I don't know what I'm going to do at the convention. He needs to keep this whole narrative going of it's me against the whole entire world. That's what keeps his followers energized and out there voting. I wonder if he's.
But I don't think he needs Ted Cruz to do that. He has Paul Ryan now.
That was one of the saddest things I've ever listened to. I mean, I'm serious. Like, but is there maybe? And he's like, yeah, maybe. And I'm like, wow, delusional self-confidence like that must make life pretty fun. I don't know.
You know, I do want to point out, though, I don't know if, in fact, Donald Trump has said he wouldn't meet with Paul Ryan. I don't think that that's happened at all. I think that the door has been open. It's just what he's saying is, look, we can meet, and if we don't agree, we don't have to unify in order for him to win.
I think they do need to unify, and that's the difficulty here. You know, the person that he needs to vilify is not Ted Cruz or Paul Ryan or anybody else. It needs to be the Democrats. It needs to be Hillary Clinton. The more we start engaging in this whole concept of are they getting together, do they hate each other, this whole Twitter back and forth, this whole PR statement back and forth, it takes attention away from who Donald Trump needs to focus on, which is Hillary Clinton.
But there's 6 months left. There's 6 months left.
I like what Speaker Ryan said.
Yeah.
It's like Donald's upset that he just didn't jump on right away. And I understand that. This is just the way Donald's personality is. Come on board with me. It looks like, you know, I'm the guy. Come on board with me. But I like the fact is let's sit down. Let's have a meeting. Let's sit down and talk. He didn't say he wouldn't support him. Right. He just wants a little more information, and I think that's very wise.
Okay. Look, I have said it before. I think it's entirely interesting that the Democrats are still have two candidates, even though you think Bernie's not viable.
Right.
And but the Republicans were down to one. And now again, if that door opens back up, you're right back to where you started.
But are they really down
Yeah,
to
it
one?
didn't sound like it from that.
Maybe not.
I'm not sure.
I
Pushing
relaunched this
back
campaign to
against
win.
stunning allegations that the social media giant Censors conservative opinion news. This is according to tech news outlet Gizmodo. Former Facebook employees who spoke out anonymously say popular articles from conservative outlets were deliberately left off its trending news sidebar. Among the topics reportedly banned: Mitt Romney, Glenn Beck, who we just saw, Senators Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, Governor Scott Walker, American Sniper Chris Kyle, the popular Drudge Report, even Lois Lerner, the former IRS official loathed by conservatives for her targeting of the Tea Party groups. Facebook furiously pushing back against the anonymous tipster, saying, quote, "We take allegations of bias very seriously. There are rigorous guidelines in place for the review team to ensure consistency and neutrality. These guidelines do not permit the suppression of political perspectives, nor do they permit the prioritization of one viewpoint over another or one news outlet over another." But Reince Priebus and the RNC calling reports of censoring conservatives chilling and adding, quote, "With 167 million U.S. Facebook users reading stories highlighted in the trending section, Facebook has the power to greatly influence the presidential election." Harris, you're nodding your head.
That's really the problem here. It's what they chose to, well, I should say one of the problems, to make trending, to make important, to slant. It's one thing to quiet a source and to censor it, but then to draw attention to something else to make you think that that's the most important. So it would be the liberal point of view or whatever. That's really an egregiousness that if they have a department that's in charge of this, they might want to clean house.
Hey, Kat, you know, I was surprised actually to read this report because I've covered tech for a long time and I know that most things are dictated by algorithms. And I assumed that this was being done by an algorithm, and it was surprising to me that they had human beings in there sort of sorting it out.
Right.
Of course, anytime you insert humans, whether they mean to or not, their bias comes in.
Exactly. The fact that there were humans doing this proves that there has to be some sort of bias at work because, like you say, all humans are biased. Everybody has it. And they just kind of denied it. But this is something that people talk about all the time. You know, conservatives, you know, media and you know, mainstream liberal. But you see examples of it, and it's kind of scary because, like you're saying, a lot of people do get their news only from places like Facebook. So it's not just about Facebook. That's people's news.
I mean, maybe that's the scary part.
That's sad, but true.
That is a little scary if you're getting your news from Facebook. But you're right, especially younger people do get their news from Twitter, from Facebook, online, on their devices. If this is true, it's disgraceful. There's no, I mean, there's no excuse for it. And you're absolutely right. There should be an algorithm, nothing else. If something's trending, it's because enough people are looking at it for it to trend or whatever the algorithm is.
Why would you need people?
Why would you need somebody? Yeah, why would you need somebody to go in there?
What always concerns me, though, is when I hear the term an anonymous source. That always concerns me. Why not, if you're going to make the statement, and all of us have made statements, we hold ourselves accountable to the statements that we make. If you're going to make an allegation or a statement, put your name next to it. That way, to me, it'll have some credence. Right now, an anonymous source said this. And of course, we're talking about it because it is impactful, and Facebook is a.
You're talking about the people that talked to Gizmodo?
I'm talking about the person that made the statement that said that conservative comments were left out of Facebook.
So let me give you a little more detail then on that front. So this report was in Gizmodo. They talked to a couple different people who wanted to remain anonymous because they still work in the tech industry, and everybody over at Facebook is really powerful, so they were afraid of reprisal. I definitely hear what you're saying, but that was their explanation.
But why would you
They did have multiple sources. I would also say that the reason why there's a human in there, and once you think about it logically, it makes sense. You know, there's an algorithm doing a lot of it, but then at the end they have to sort through what's obscene. You know, what is a source that you can't put on the site no matter what. So there has to be human contact in there. Go ahead.
I know you have interviewed a lot of the heads of these tech companies. So I think that we understand the difference between what's obscene and then what is censorship. Right? So if you're telling me that you don't want bad words on the site, as a mom, I'm good with that. But if you're telling me that you don't want conservatives or liberals or any other group, then I have to scratch my head. And I agree with you, Katherine, that we all have a bias. We're human. What we're asked to do as journalists and what we're asked to do as ethics keepers in different positions, is to be able to put that bias aside and make a decision not about who is right, but what is right to get to the truth. That's what our job is. And so do they have somebody in that department who can do that? Because if they don't, again, clean house and let a machine do it.
And also they're deciding what is a reliable news source, which is a very interesting question in this day and age, because there was the day when everybody pretended they had no bias whatsoever. We're all straight down the middle. We don't have any political opinions, which was disingenuous. That has changed. Now in the news media, I think people come out and you're like, here's my basic point of view. I'm being honest about that, and I'm going to try and now present both sides. It's tricky territory, right, Julie? I mean, we all run into it every day.
It's very tricky, but look, the Drudge Report is not obscene. There's no reason to censor that as a news source. It is a news source for millions upon millions of people every day. We should be able to have a trend.
Okay, Harvard University is cracking down on exclusive all-male clubs. I know Melissa has a lot to say about this.
Oh, gosh.
Our Ivy Leaguer on the couch. The restrictions they're putting on students who join them and whether they go too far.
An update to a story we told about you back in April about the all-male clubs at Harvard University. The school was pressuring the clubs to go co-ed after a task force found the single-sex organizations raised serious concerns about sexual assault on women. Led to a big debate on campus, and now the school is taking action. Starting in the fall of 2017, students who join unrecognized single-gender clubs, male or female, won't be able to hold leadership positions in official campus organizations or sports teams and will not be eligible to be endorsed for fellowships and scholarships. The president of Harvard saying in a statement, a truly inclusive community requires that students have the opportunity to participate in the life of campus free from exclusion on arbitrary grounds. You know I'm coming to you first, Melissa, right?
And last.
You went to Harvard, right? You were in a female club. Your husband was a president.
I know. I've been hoping to avoid this debate on the couch. My husband was president of an all-male final club. I was in an all-female final club. This is a ridiculous conversation because it is a very small percent of the population at Harvard. I think it's like 10% or something smaller. This is not this glamorous thing they're not letting women into. It is 20 dorks around on Saturday night playing beer pong by themselves. The problem with Harvard is there is no social life whatsoever. Everybody is in the library on the weekend and every night. No one is doing anything fun at all. That's the problem. This is the very limited social life that goes on at Harvard. Go co-ed, don't go co-ed. Who cares? It's a tiny percent of the population, and they have stifled all kinds of socialization on campus with all kinds of rules, and then people who don't want to go out anyway. It's a ridiculous conversation.
30%,
make it co-ed,
right?
don't. Who cares? I mean, they're making a PC point that is almost irrelevant on campus because so few people belong to the group.
So, well, I agree with everything you said, except for one thing. I went to Boston University, the Harvard of Boston. At the same time that you were across the river at the much lesser school of Harvard University.
Studying,
and,
I'm sure.
I'm calling complete BS on this. I went to some great parties in Harvard and parties.
Really?
Partied? Maybe you.
Where was I?
Maybe I was in the library.
So they're saying they're doing it for inclusion, right? But here's the thing. So you're saying kids can't get scholarships, and it costs what, more than $60 grand a year to go to Harvard? That's not really inclusion. That's going to be stopping students who could have maybe had some help,
also,
right?
The university has no jurisdiction over these.
Right.
Well, I mean, they don't own the land. They're not part of. They're not part of the university per se.
Excellent point.
So what they basically do is why can't they do what they want? And the university can do what they want as far as not allowing them in leadership roles. But you can't have a position on the football team. You can't be, if you're voted by the people on the team, if you're the captain of that football team and you've exemplified to everybody that you deserve to be a leader, and the school says, wait a second, sorry, you can't be a leader because of an inclusion in a particular aspect of life. I find it very wrong.
It is ridiculous. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I want to go back to the tale of two Harvards.
Where are these parties?
You partied like it was 1999.
It was 1999.
You didn't party at all. And you were in an all-women's club.
I guess maybe. Well, I mean, we had fun in our club. I mean, I came from LA, where before I went to Harvard, I would go out at UCLA and like a real
So you
college.
have a party someplace else.
Can I explain something to you? This is why Melissa got into Harvard, and they wouldn't even let me on campus because somebody spent some time in the library and somebody else spent a lot of time partying at the worst house in Harvard Square.
Maybe if you were at Harvard, you didn't get invited.
I used to waitress there.
There you go.
Yeah.
But see, that's off campus, which kind of fits my point, is that they've shoved all social life off campus. They don't facilitate sort of any social gatherings because they want everybody
I met some people
to sit around
who
and
took me on campus there.
Okay.
So
It's all right, so I was doing a loser.
You had a good time
I had a great college year.
You had a great time at Harvard.
No, I was just going to say, it's an excellent point, though, that you make, because if the school actually doesn't have any kind of power over the land or power over those clubs or anything, how can they hold your attendance or membership against you when it comes to on-campus things?
Because it's
like,
a private school, they can do anything they want. So they realized that this was a very clever solution where they would say, fine, go ahead, you can join those clubs, but then we're going to ban you from
It's
doing
not a
anything
clever
you want
solution.
to do on
It's not clever.
I meant it in a sarcastic way.
Absolutely.
Sarcastic.
And I agree with you 100%. It's something that they've decided to do that makes no sense whatsoever.
There you go.
You know, if you go to a school that only costs like $20,000 a year, maybe you'll have more freedom. I don't know.
Or maybe you won't have to travel across town to have a party.
We got to talk more about this over cocktails because I got to figure out where you were.
Cocktails is the operative word. Apparently some of you didn't have it.
It's the tale of two hearts. Only on Outnumbered. Well, while many teachers need more books in their classrooms very seriously, one school district is doing something else with the money. They're ready to build the most expensive high school football stadium in the nation. $63 million taxpayer money they're going to do it with. Will it help students reach their dreams, or is this totally ridiculous? We'll talk.
Voters in a town outside Dallas approving plans to build the most expensive high school football stadium in the nation. The 12,000-seat facility and event center in McKinney, Texas, has a price tag of nearly $63 million of taxpayer money. Wow. Supporters, including this teacher, see it's worth it.
This bond is definitely needed. This place is going to be as big or bigger than Plano, and Plano's got 2 large stadiums.
All right. So, but critics say, how does it compare to Plano? That's all anyone cares about. Should the money go to something more important? Is that new stadium unnecessary?
We've got a perfectly fine stadium, and that can be fixed up with some of the money that MISD has, and it would be fine.
So it's not about Plano, it turns out. The stadium costing more than $60 million, 18,000-seat high school stadium in Allen, Texas that opened in 2012, and more than the $62.5 million stadium under construction in Katy, Texas. I can't even keep up with all those things.
It's
Joe?
just a lot of our money.
Okay.
That's what
let's let Harris go. You got an opinion there.
I mean, you're all about football, and
not all about it, but I've spent my life a little bit in it.
You got more bling on. Wow.
You wanted to wear.
Tiffany,
honey. You said you wanted to wear that.
Oh,
so.
my goodness.
He's a hungry dog here. Yeah, I got that on.
It's bigger. If you talk to anybody from Texas, it's bigger and better in Texas, and it goes to the fact that they want to build a stadium that way. What I find interesting is they've lost 6,000 seats, and they've upped the ante $60 million. And it's a facility that's going to be used for soccer, field hockey, and by the way, 3 high schools will be sharing that stadium. So I look at about $15 million per high school when you stop and break it down.
It's dropping the bucket.
Still a lot of money,
There's no question it's a lot of money. But you want to look at also what the educational programs that are available in those high schools as well. I think it's important to balance it. But when you sit down and say $62 million for a 12,000-seat stadium, you've got to figure what is going to be taking place in that stadium.
Does it come with books?
Are there tickets? Are you going to sell tickets?
But Joe, let me ask you this: you were, I guess, an okay football player. Did you need to get that? Did you need to? I mean, you didn't need to play in a field like this in high school to get to where you got, right? I mean, do you really need to do this to be a great football player?
The high school field I played in, I think, had maybe 1,500 seats. Maybe not even that. There were 1,000 of us in the school. It was small, but the things have changed, and the field quality has changed. The impact and emphasis on high school football has changed. We see high school combines now for kids that I never dreamed would happen. We see evaluations of young men that I thought would never happen. Yeah. But I really think that you have to weigh is there money for education? Is there money for education? And then build whatever you want. But like I said, the obviously somebody in Texas has come up with the voters have come up with a lot of money. The people like it. And that's really all that matters.
Well, so it was a bond issue. They went out and they voted it. They rolled a lot of things together. It was approved by 63%, so not everybody likes it, but the majority do.
Majority do.
And you talk about the trade-off between education, and Kat, I will ask you, because I went and looked it up. So they have a 95% graduation rate, pretty good. They are 96th in the state, though, in Texas, this high school group.
I get that football is really fun for some people. Like, in high school, I was on the, not to brag, but I was on the varsity mock trial team.
Nice.
Okay? Not to brag. But for whatever reason, nobody liked to come and watch that. Okay? Nobody wanted to watch it. I get with football, it's like maybe it's like an economic boost or this or that, but that's so much money.
It's just called the football stadium, though.
We gotta go. More outnumbered in just a moment.
So Katherine wasn't quite sure if she was going to be into football, and then Joe put this on her. Can we get a close-up of that?
Woo!
It's pretty nice. I love it.
I want to see her mock trial ring, though.
I
want to see the ring.
I told you I have a T-shirt with a cow on it that says "Mook Trial." So nobody talked to me.
That's your trophy.
Stay put. Happening now. Starts now. Wow, that was a lively hour of television. I can't wait for Outnumbered Overtime. Oh, gee, baby. Yeah, I have to give you this ring back. I almost took out my chin when I did OT. Did you notice it was like out of order?
And do you realize do you realize that this is 17?
Look at this.
Wow. This is 17. You ought to wait till you see Denver's 50th and New England's 49th. I mean, the rings are at least twice as big now.
What?
And
my
weigh
arm would
twice
fall
as
off,
much.
I think.
They're 30 pennyweight.
Beautiful.
For those that in the jewelry business.
Do you wear it all the time?
Only for shows like this and when I do speeches and presentations.
Just to show off.
You don't sleep.
Well, actually, what's funny? It's interesting. Yes. I think that's
Totally, I would.
But the other thing is so many. I see so many kids. And a lot of people have never seen one. And so what I like to do is let the kids wear them and get their pictures taken with them.
Oh, yeah.
So that at some point in time, you get to take. I've had guys come up to me that would say, hey, look, when I was 8 years old, you let me wear the ring. And now I'm 38 years old, and I still have the picture of you and I with the ring. So it's more than just ours. It belongs to a lot of different people.
All right, I'm going to read an angry tweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Go.
All right.
Angry Bird movies coming out.
Kat, Melissa, Julie, Harris, Joe. Cruz was not serious. Stop being Trump shills. You're misleading the people. So, breaking news during our hour of Outnumbered today was Glenn Beck interviewing Senator Ted Cruz. The question came up because it is Primary Tuesday, quietly Primary Tuesday. You know, Donald Trump still has not gotten to 1237. Hillary Clinton hasn't completely wrapped it up. But whatever the scape is, the landscape is, the question to Senator Cruz was, would you get back in if you won Nebraska tonight, which only has 36 delegates, by the way. And so this viewer is expressing the fact that our response to it made it look like we thought he was serious.
Well, you know what, actually, whether he was serious or not, it's a serious issue. Trump is not at 1237. He will need Cruz's delegates, Rubio's delegates, Kasich's delegates. I forgot who else has delegates, but several other people. He will eventually be 1237, I believe, by the convention. But in case in case Cruz were to pick up the 36 today and going on, I'm not sure where else he's on the ballot going forward, but he does have a lot of leverage with respect to the platform because of those delegates. He does have a lot of leverage with respect to what Trump does and how quickly and easily he gets this nomination at the convention. And
that's interesting.
I think it's amazing that this guy can read Ted Cruz's mind.
But it didn't sound tongue-in-cheek to me.
Yeah.
I mean, in the conversation with Glenn Beck, it just didn't sound tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, you know,
and we played
if I get back in, we'll go. And, you know, all of us heard the sound, so I'm assuming that's why we made the decisions that we made.
See, to me, it sounded like he was dragged to the answer. Like, they kept saying, but what if you won? And he said, but I won't. And they said, what if you won? But then his answer was, I would get back in. If the person at home who's tweeting at us doesn't think that he would get back in, or we wouldn't hear from him first thing tomorrow morning if he won. Right. I mean, if he won Nebraska, you bet we would hear from Ted Cruz first thing tomorrow morning. You think he would just quietly sit there?
How does a guy who's not even in the race win and not say anything? That would be that would be such a rebuke of Trump. Of course, he'd have to say something.
So we love our viewers. Susan K., thank you for that. I mean, we want to answer all of your tweets and get your voice here too. One of the things though that came up with you, Melissa, though, was really interesting, and that is, what if? And I don't know about the deal making and how that old wacky stuff works in Washington, but I did read the book Art of the Deal. And what if it really benefits Donald Trump Trump to have that other, you know, the iron sharpens iron. Maybe he liked having an opponent. I don't know.
I think he needs it to keep the narrative going because his whole thing is, I'm the outsider. I'm against everybody. I'm against the right
Trump?
and I'm against the left. Trump. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think they do a deal for Cruz to get back in?
No, I think keeping him like kind of barking on the sideline is really helpful. And this quote is helpful. And I think that it's too early, actually, for him to pivot right at Hillary. We have 6 months left. I mean, that's a little dangerous. You go head-to-head for 6 months. I think he still needs to run against. That's why he's talking about, well, Paul Ryan, we're going to sit down. And Paul Ryan's saying, I need to talk to him first. And Trump is saying, you know what, I don't care if the party comes together or not. I don't think I need a unified party. I think he still has to keep that narrative going, that he's not embracing the Republican establishment for as long as possible. So as long as anyone on the right continues to make noise, that's helpful to Trump.
I'm sorry, but he's got to be careful because a lot of these people like Cruz, like Rubio, I'm using them as an example, it is in their interest for Trump to lose. In a very cold, selfish reason, they want Hillary Clinton to get elected so they have another shot in 4 years. If Trump gets elected, that's 8 years of Trump. Their time will probably have passed.
Because the nation tends to elect incumbents.
No.
Is that right?
Well, right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, not just that, but again, you know, their time will have passed. So they certainly can't run against Trump in a primary if he's the sitting incumbent president. So from a very selfish perspective, he needs to make them happy because he needs them invested, or at least optically invested in his race. Paul Ryan's another example of this. Paul Ryan is somebody who could run very easily in 4 years. He needs to bring these people in. Not the least reason is because Hillary is on track to raise $1 billion. He's very behind in fundraising. Money is the mother's milk of politics. He said he's not self-financing.
That's a visual.
Yeah, well, it is. If you saw all these politicians, well,
stop. Stop.
Did that happen at one of those parties over at Harvard?
Yeah, you know what? No,
apparently I missed.
I've got a visual of that.
I was attorney for Ted Kennedy during those days, so I'm going to...
Oh, my gosh. Oh, goodness.
But can I just say, point of personal privilege here, because Kat and I were discussing this, that sometimes people tweet when we get into these little heated exchanges that we don't like each other for some reason because we don't politically agree on something.
I know.
I love this girl. This has nothing whatsoever to do with any personality differences.
I love Julie.
As the people have to stop thinking that just because we don't necessarily agree on something, it means that we don't personally respect
It's wonderful that you two have a you know, being sort of the guy that gets to be that one lucky guy. It's great to hear the debate and the passion that both of you have on both sides, and the intelligence by which you present.
People are like, go get her. It's like, no, I really like Julie.
And people need to understand.
I actually noticed Kat moving over closer to me.
Well, she's moving more to the right.
That's because you gave her a Super Bowl ring. I mean, you know how we girls are. Give us a diamond.
Give us a diamond, off you go.
There was a lot of blame.
I want to get to the chat because we got a lot of people signed on. Hubbly Bubbly says, do you think that's his real name?
Yes.
Please ask Julie if FBI Director James Comey recommending a prosecution for Hillary Clinton would be damaging enough to derail her campaign. Thank you, he says.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have the FBI, the director of the FBI recommending an indictment, incredibly damaging. I mean, possibly.
What if DOJ doesn't take it, though? And would we know?
I think we would know because Comey, don't forget, Comey's the guy that essentially, when he worked for the Bush administration, and they were doing something that he legally disagreed with, he made it known. I mean, he quit. He resigned over the fact that they did something that he wasn't in agreement with. He's not somebody who I think would be quiet about it, and I think we would know about it. I think the FBI agents who worked with him on this would certainly.
Well, they've already said they'll leak it.
And they'll leak it, and they should. And we should know about it.
I
think the Justice Department would have an incredibly tough time not taking it seriously if there was an indictment recommendation. However, if there is not an indictment recommendation, I truly wish people would at least respect Comey, excuse me, enough to understand that he's not a hack. If he doesn't recommend an indictment, can we just move on, please? Because that's the other side of the coin.
So one of your cousins is on the live chat, Jamal Coors. Kat, when can I get an invite to the show? He would like to hang out with you.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, and Faye 3 Out wants to know who's wearing the most expensive shoes. That would be you.
Yeah.
Mr. Ferragamo.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I know. Melissa's are pretty.
Mine are cheap and fun.
So let's talk a little bit, if we can, today about, or now, because I'm seeing this trend with so many of these, I'm just going to scoop it up as one topic. So the primary tonight, you've got West Virginia and Nebraska for the GOP, and you've got West Virginia, which I guess has been a sticky wicket for some reason. Is it the coal miners statement?
Oh, heavens, yes. What she said in March, I want to put the coal miners and the coal companies out of business.
You know, she tried to clean it up this week.
How do you clean that up?
Yeah, that's very clear.
I mean,
I misspoke.
I made this. You took it out of context. No, you said this. And I was watching some of the interviews this morning on Fox, and some of the people being interviewed at the diner there. They were talking to different individuals. And I found some of the comments by the individuals interesting. I'm voting against Hillary.
Right.
Well, then are you going to vote for Bernie? Well, I'm voting against Hillary.
Yeah.
It's almost like any other option is what's available to me because of what she said. You can't go into West Virginia. You can't go into the coal mining states and say, this is what I want to do. I mean, that,
I want to take your livelihood and vote for me.
I'll take what President Obama said about the emails. That's careless and irresponsible. When you're going into West Virginia and you talk about doing this, I mean, how many people do you really want to upset?
Well, but you know, if I could be Machiavellian about this, and I might be a little bit, yeah. It actually is advantageous to her for the Democratic base, because the Democratic base, one of the top 2 or 3 concerns among the base, among Democrats, is global warming. Coal is a contributor to global warming. Democrats are very, very passionate about that. It's not a state that she's going to count on winning in November anyway. So for us to be bringing attention to her comments are going to hurt her today, but it doesn't matter whether she wins this primary. She's got the delegates to win the nomination.
So what you're saying is, excuse me, what you're saying is she doesn't care about the people of West Virginia.
No, that's not what I'm saying, because
but that's what I.
Well, maybe that's what you're hearing. There's 2 things here. One is, look, and Melissa can speak to this, natural gas is ending the coal industry regardless of what Obama does. And actually, I think before Obama came in, coal jobs were about 50% down even before he came in from their height. Fracking, natural gas,
it just
solar
sounds
power.
so insensitive.
But wait a second, it's not insensitive.
Right.
And the second aspect of this that I think is very important to remember is that she does in her budget have $30 billion allocated for transitioning those people into other jobs. It's not going to be good enough for them. I understand.
Too bad she didn't say that on the day that she stood up.
No, but she did try to clean it up and say it again.
All right, real quickly, a couple things on the live chat as we ease on out of here. Dave Fix says, will Trump convince Ryan to get on board in the big meeting on Thursday he's talking about? Emily Trek says Trump will take Paul Ryan to school. Watch. I think a lot of people are keyed in. You made an excellent point during the hour of TV today. You said you have never known as much about a primary season and how the delegates work.
Right.
As you know right now. I think people are tuning in like never before.
I don't think it's necessarily will Donald Trump get Paul Ryan on board. I think it'll be a clarification of positions, a unification of saying this is where we need to go. Donald has been vehement over the last 2 months saying, let's unite the party. He keeps saying, let's unite the party, let's unite the party. Everybody else is saying he's fracturing the party. That's not true. I think this is an opportunity to get with Speaker Ryan and sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do to defeat Hillary Clinton? What do we need to do for the Republicans to take back the White House? What can we do together and go forward?
Your phone is ringing. It's Reince Priebus from the RNC, and he wants to know if you'll come and quarterback the meeting.
Well,
you coming?
I'd be happy to.
You're so good
if
to
I get
have
the
you.
invitation, thank you.
I'm
It's
so
great to be
glad
with you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to roll on out of here, and we're going to try on some more Super Bowl rings while you guys turn off. Goodbye.